How can one accidental seat assignment destroy a relationship midair? What happens when a harmless coincidence turns into a viral scandal and a lawful ending? Can a woman still claim innocence when the evidence says otherwise? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Calla, and I swear it really was an accident. I didn't plan to sit next to my ex on that plane, and I definitely didn't mean for the photo to go viral. One random seat assignment, one stupid smile caught on camera, and suddenly everyone thinks I planned the whole thing. The internet turned it into a story about fate and rekindled love, while my boyfriend Eli turned it into evidence that I'd betrayed him. I tried explaining that Nathan and I just talked, that it was harmless, but once people see something online, they believe it's the truth. Eli's silence scared me more than his anger ever could. He stopped arguing, stopped reacting, just started organizing. I thought he was cooling off, but now I realize he was preparing. I kept telling myself it would blow over, that people would forget, but the internet never forgets. And apparently neither does Eli. Maybe if I hadn't laughed, maybe if I hadn't posted that caption, "Old flames still friendly," he wouldn't have looked at me like a stranger when I got home. Now I'm sitting here, replaying every second of that flight, wondering if the real mistake wasn't the seat, but the story I told afterward. I swear it was really an accident. The kind of accident that starts small, a random seat assignment, a name that means nothing at check-in, and somehow ends with your whole life being picked apart by strangers online. When I saw him sitting there, aisle 14B, I almost laughed. Nathan, my ex, the one I told Eli I never even think about anymore. The flight attendant said the plane was full and my seat, 14A, was right beside his. What was I supposed to do? Make a scene? Refuse to sit? That would have looked worse. So I smiled, told him this was funny, and slipped into my seat like it was no big deal. He grinned the same way he always did when he thought he had the upper hand. Said something about fate having a sense of humor. I said something about coincidences. He smelled like the cologne I used to buy him, same warm scent that clung to my sweater after we broke up. I told myself it didn't matter. We were adults. People sit next to exes all the time. I texted Eli, told him I'd boarded safely. Didn't mention who was sitting beside me. It felt easier that way. The plane took off, and Nathan started talking like we'd never lost touch. Asked about work, the house, if I still had that cat that hated everyone. He laughed when I told him she finally ran away last year. I laughed too, more than I should have. Maybe because it was easier than sitting in silence. He mentioned how good I looked, said marriage must be treating me well. I said it's been busy, not bad. Then he leaned closer, his voice low, like we were sharing a secret again. Said he missed how easy we used to be. I told him not to start. He said he wasn't starting anything, just remembering. The woman across the aisle smirked over her magazine, and I could feel my cheeks heat up. It wasn't like that, I wanted to say. But explaining would have sounded defensive. I just smiled, half polite, half trapped. Somewhere over Kansas, a flight attendant recognized him from college or something. She asked for a photo. He agreed, pulled me into the frame before I could react. "Old friends on the same flight," he said, and she laughed, snapping the picture. A few minutes later, I saw her post it on her Instagram story. Crazy coincidence. Look who ended up side by side after years apart. I told Nathan it was harmless. He said I should tag him if I saw it. I said I didn't even use Instagram much. That was a lie. I knew the picture would circulate. People love those "what are the odds" moments. I even thought it might make for a funny story to tell later. I didn't know that by the time we landed, that story would already belong to everyone else. My phone lit up before the seatbelt sign turned off. Messages from Tessa. "Girl, what is this photo? Why is your ex on your flight?" Then another. "You look way too happy to call that an accident." My stomach dropped. The post had been reshared by someone we both knew, and the caption read, "Some flames never die." Nathan saw me scrolling and smirked. "Guess we went viral," he said. I told him it wasn't funny, but my voice shook. He said it wasn't my fault. "People always see what they want to see," he added, and that part stuck in my head. When we landed, Eli's text waited for me. "Did you sit next to him?" I froze. He must have seen the post already. I typed, "It wasn't planned," then deleted it. I typed, "I'll explain later," deleted that too. Finally sent just, "Yeah, weird coincidence." No reply. Nathan offered to share a cab since we lived in the same direction. I said no, I'd booked a rideshare already. He shrugged, said, "No hard feelings." I smiled back because that's what polite people do. but inside I could feel something cracking. The drive home felt endless. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was Eli. It never was. By the time I got to our driveway, the streetlights were on, and the house looked darker than usual. Eli's car was there, but all the windows were closed tight. When I walked inside, he was at the table, laptop open, a spreadsheet glowing across the screen. He didn't look up right away, just asked, good flight? I said yes, long but fine. He nodded, still typing. I waited for him to ask more, but he didn't. Finally, I said, small world, right? You won't believe who was sitting next to me. He said, I already know. I laughed nervously, said it was a total fluke. He said, it's always a fluke with you. That tone, quiet, flat, hurt more than shouting ever could. I told him people were overreacting online, that I didn't even talk to Nathan much. He said nothing, closed his laptop, and stood. For a second, I thought he might yell. Instead, he picked up his coffee mug, rinsed it, and set it on the opposite counter from mine. Separate corners, like two sides of a battlefield. I followed him down the hall, kept talking, trying to fill the silence. I said he had nothing to worry about, that everyone was blowing it out of proportion. He asked if I'd deleted the post. I said yes, even though I hadn't yet. He said, good. Then he went into the guest room and shut the door. The click of the latch felt louder than the landing gear earlier. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the door, wondering if this was really about a photo or something bigger I couldn't name. When I finally checked my phone again, the post had doubled in shares. Someone had tagged my company. Another person commented, imagine being her husband right now. I wanted to throw the phone, but instead I took a screenshot. Some part of me still thought I could control the story if I had proof. That night, Eli didn't come to bed. I lay awake, scrolling through the comments, crafting explanations in my head. We were assigned seats by chance. I didn't post it. He's just my ex, nothing more. The words felt thin, see-through. Around 2 a.m., I heard a faint hum from down the hall, his printer starting up. A single page slid out. Then silence. In the morning, he was already gone, his coffee mug spotless, mine half full and cold. The phone buzzed again, Tessa sending another message. You need to say something before someone else does. I typed back, it was just a seat, and stared at the words before hitting send. Even then, I wasn't sure if I believed myself. The first thing I noticed that morning was the silence. No coffee smell, no sound of the shower, no small noise from the hallway. Just the hum of the fridge and the tick of the kitchen clock. Eli had already left for work, which wasn't unusual, but the air felt heavier, like the quiet was doing it on purpose. I poured cold coffee from the pot he'd left on the counter and told myself he just needed time. He wasn't the kind of man to stay angry. He'd cool off, then we'd laugh about the whole thing later. That's what I kept repeating while my stomach twisted every time my phone buzzed. By the time I got to work, the post was everywhere. People didn't even try to hide it anymore. Someone had clipped the photo and added text, when fate seats you next to the one that got away. I told myself not to care. I'd handled worse gossip in high school, hadn't I? But this was different. The comments were full of strangers calling me disloyal, calling Eli a fool. I opened my messages and saw one from Tessa. You should probably say something. Everyone's talking about it. I typed back, what's there to say? It was an accident, she replied. Eli looks bad. People are making him into a meme. That part hit harder than I expected. I told her people needed to stop exaggerating. She said, then tell them the truth. I didn't. I just set my phone face down and pretended to work. Around noon, I noticed my boss hovering near my desk. She smiled too tightly, the kind of smile you give someone you don't want to offend. She said there'd been chatter online about me and asked if I wanted to control the narrative. I said there was no narrative to control, just a silly misunderstanding. She nodded, still smiling, but her eyes looked sorry for me. When I got home that night, Eli was in the same spot at the kitchen table, laptop open, spreadsheet glowing. He didn't look up when I came in. I said, you could at least say hi. He said, I'm working. I laughed to break the tension, asked if he'd seen the comments. He said, I saw enough. His tone was calm, too calm. I said people were taking it out of context, that it was just one picture. He said, that's all it takes, isn't it? I dropped my purse harder than I meant to. You're really going to believe strangers over me? He looked up finally and said, I believe what I see. That line made me want to scream. I told him he was being dramatic. He said, I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear. I tried to make him laugh, said we should just post a cute picture together and end the rumors. He didn't answer. Instead, he closed his laptop, stood, and opened the drawer beside the fridge. When it slid shut, I heard a soft click. A lock. I didn't even know that drawer had a lock. He said, "You don't have to worry about the bills anymore. I moved some things around." I asked what that meant. He said, "It means I'm handling them." I wanted to ask if he didn't trust me, but I knew the answer, so I said something petty instead. "You're really letting a seat assignment ruin our marriage." He said, "I'm letting the truth sort itself out." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his calm face across the table. I kept scrolling through the comments, finding new ones with every refresh. Someone had tagged my office again. Someone else posted a screenshot of Eli's profile picture with a caption that read, "Imagine being him right now." I deleted my account at 2 a.m, then reactivated it 5 minutes later. I couldn't look away. The next morning, the silence returned. 2 mugs sat on the counter again, his spotless, mine half full. I stared at them for too long. I texted him, "Can we talk tonight?" He didn't reply. By lunch, I texted again, "Please don't ignore me." Still nothing. At work, my manager asked me to stop by HR. The woman there was polite but distant. She said, "We've had some feedback about your social media visibility." I said I'd deleted everything. She said, "Good. Keep it that way for a while." Her tone made it clear she didn't believe me. Tessa called after work. She said, "He's not talking to you, is he?" I asked how she knew. She said she saw him at the bank earlier, meeting with someone in a suit. My heart dropped, but I acted like it was fine. "Probably work stuff," I said. She paused for a long time before saying, "You should check your credit cards, Calla." When I got home, the first thing I did was open our shared account on my phone. The password didn't work. I tried again. Same message. Invalid login. My chest went tight. I told myself it was a glitch, that he'd probably changed it because of online leaks or something. Still, it didn't feel like safety. It felt like distance. Dinner was quiet again. I made pasta, left a plate out for him. He came home late, washed his hands, and went straight to the fridge. I said, "I cooked." He said, "You didn't have to?" He reheated leftovers from the night before, standing while he ate. I asked if he was mad about the account. He said, "I'm adjusting things?" I said, "You mean hiding things." He said, "You're the one hiding." I snapped then, told him he was paranoid, that nothing even happened. He said, "That's what everyone says before something happens." His calm voice made me shake. I told him he couldn't treat me like a criminal. He said, "Then stop acting like one." After he went to bed in the guest room again, I noticed something new on the fridge. A sticky note with neat handwriting. "Bring forms. No explanation." I wanted to tear it off, but I didn't. It felt like a warning I didn't understand yet. At work the next day, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You might want to delete your old posts before HR does." I stared at it for a long time, my hands shaking. When I looked up, my boss was watching me from across the office. That night, I tried to break the ice. I told Eli maybe we should take a weekend trip, get away from all this. He said, "I already have plans." I asked with who? He said, "Someone who listens." I felt my throat close. I asked if that meant a woman. He said, "It means someone professional." He went into the guest room and shut the door again. I sat on the couch for hours after that, scrolling through my camera roll, deleting pictures of Nathan and me from years ago, as if erasing them could undo what everyone saw. My phone buzzed again. Tessa this time. "He's serious, isn't he?" she wrote. I answered, "He just needs space." But even as I typed it, I could feel the lie in my fingers. When I walked into the kitchen to throw away the pasta, I heard a faint sound, metal scraping inside the locked drawer. I bent down and saw the edge of a folder peeking through the gap. White label, black letters, utilities. I tried to pull it open, but it didn't budge. The printer light blinked once, then went dark. A single sheet sat in the tray, blank, except for the faint smell of toner. I touched it, leaving a fingerprint on the corner. The quiet swallowed me again. I told myself I wasn't afraid, just tired. I'd fix everything tomorrow. I always do. But for the first time, I wasn't sure if tomorrow was still something we shared. The morning light made everything look too clean. I stood in the kitchen staring at the space where his coffee mug should have been. It was gone. Only mine sat there, still unwashed, a brown ring drying at the bottom. The sticky note that said "Bring forms" had disappeared from the fridge. In its place was a calendar magnet with a small new entry written in his careful handwriting. Downtown, 10:45. No explanation, no initials. Just those words. At work, the whispers had evolved into full-on conversations. I could feel them pause whenever I entered the break room. A coworker named Denise leaned toward me and said in a voice that pretended to be kind, "Rough week, huh?" I told her I didn't know what she meant. She said she'd seen the new post, some edited clip that stitched the flight photo with an old vacation picture of Nathan and me from years ago. Someone had captioned it, "Rekindled on the runway." My stomach turned. I told myself it would blow over. Everything online does. I avoided my inbox, avoided eye contact, avoided the thought that maybe Eli had seen it too. When lunchtime came, I walked down to the cafe below our office. The barista, who usually smiled, kept her eyes on the register. I wanted to tell her it was exaggerated, that people were cruel, but the words stuck in my throat. Halfway through my sandwich, my phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number again. "You should stop acting like you're innocent. Everyone knows." I dropped my fork. My reflection in the window looked strange, smiling faintly, like it didn't belong to me. I blocked the number, but it came back from another one, sending a screenshot of the post that had now hit 10,000 views. By the time I got back upstairs, HR wanted a quick chat. They said the company needed to address reputation risk. The woman leading the meeting had a printed copy of the image in her folder. I wanted to tell her I didn't post it, that I couldn't control what strangers said. But I knew how it looked. She asked if my husband was also in marketing. I said yes. She asked if he'd be willing to make a statement clarifying that everything was fine at home. I didn't answer. When I got home that night, the kitchen smelled faintly of toner again. The window blinds were drawn, the house too neat. Eli was sitting at the table, phone in hand, scrolling through something I couldn't see. I said, "We need to talk." He said, "About what?" His tone was flat, almost polite. I told him about HR, about the people twisting everything. He said, "Maybe they're not twisting. Maybe they're just watching." I said, "You think I wanted this?" He said, "I think you needed it." That sentence hit like cold water. I told him he had no idea what I was going through. He said, "You mean what you caused?" I walked closer, trying to keep my voice calm. "You could at least defend me." He looked up slowly. "Why? You already have an audience." I wanted to throw something, to shake him, to make him shout. Anything but that calm detachment. Instead, I said the only thing that came to mind. "You're overreacting." He smiled faintly, like he'd heard the line too many times before. I turned away, pretending to check my phone. The group chat with Tessa was full of messages. She'd sent screenshots of comments about Eli, ones that called him the husband everyone pities. She said, "You need to fix this fast. People are turning on you." I typed back, "He won't even speak to me." She wrote, "Then speak louder." So I did. I posted a photo of me and Eli from last Christmas, both of us smiling in front of the tree. The caption read, "Love wins, even when the internet doesn't understand." Within minutes, the comments filled up. Half of them heart emojis, half calling me fake. Eli didn't say a word about it. But that night, I saw him take his phone from the charger, scroll, and then place it face down on the nightstand. A faint red light blinked from the corner of his laptop across the hall. I couldn't tell if it was recording or syncing, but I didn't ask. The next day, at the office, a coworker stopped me near the elevators. "Your husband came by this morning," she said. My heart skipped. "Here?" She nodded. Said he was dropping something off. Looked very formal. When I got home, I checked the hall table. A new folder sat there, plain blue, labeled Household. I opened it. Inside were printed bank statements and a sticky note in his handwriting. "Review pending." My mouth went dry. I told myself he was just reorganizing, but why print everything? Why now? That evening, I tried to play normal, and I asked if he wanted to watch a show, said I'd cook dinner. He said he'd already eaten. I asked where. He said downtown. I froze. "For work?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Personal." Something inside me snapped. I accused him of trying to make me jealous, of being cruel just to get even. He didn't rise to it. He just said, "You wanted a story. I'm giving you one." When I slammed the bedroom door, I heard a soft mechanical hum, his phone vibrating once, twice. I peeked through the crack. He was writing something down on a small notepad, checking his watch, then tucking the page into the blue folder. The next morning, I woke up early and checked the hall table again. The folder was gone. The printer light blinked. I opened the tray, another blank page, faintly warm. At work, my badge didn't open the main door right away. The receptionist said the system was just glitching, but her eyes looked uneasy. She said HR might need to see me again. I told her I was busy. That afternoon, Tessa called in a whisper. He was at the notary's office, she said. I drove by after lunch. My hand tightened around the phone. Why were you near there? I asked. She hesitated. Because I wanted to see if it was true. I didn't believe it until I saw him walk out with a folder. I laughed it off, said she was being dramatic. She said quietly, He's not the one making a scene, Calla. When I got home, the house was spotless. Too spotless. The fridge magnets were rearranged, alphabet letters spelling forms sent. My hands shook as I tried to move them back. One fell to the floor, clattering louder than it should have. In the living room, the lamp was on, casting a soft yellow light over the coffee table. A single USB sat there, labeled only with a date from last week. I touched it, half expecting it to burn. Eli walked in from the hallway, calm as ever. Looking for something? He asked. I hid the USB behind my back, said I was just cleaning. He didn't reach for it. He just said, You always clean when you feel guilty. I wanted to ask what he knew, what he'd seen, what he was planning, but the words tangled in my throat. He walked past me, picked up his jacket, and said he had to go out. I asked where. He said, Follow up. Then he left, leaving the front door half open, like an invitation or a warning. I locked it behind him, but it didn't make me feel safer. I plugged the USB into my laptop. Inside was a single folder named Archive A. It held nothing but sound files, short clips, each labeled with a date and time. I clicked one at random. My own voice played. It wasn't like that, Eli. You always twist things. I ripped the USB out and stared at the wall. The faint smell of toner still hung in the air, sharper now, like proof of something finished. I didn't sleep that night. Every shadow looked like him standing there, calm, waiting for me to say the next wrong thing. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the smell of his cologne lingering near the door. He'd already left again, early, before sunrise. The USB still sat on the counter where I'd dropped it after pacing half the night. I wanted to throw it away, but some part of me couldn't. It felt like evidence, though I wasn't sure of what. At breakfast, I tried to convince myself everything would settle down. People would find a new scandal online. HR would get distracted by someone else. Eli would calm down like he always did. Still, the house felt wrong. The quiet had a shape now, neat, deliberate, heavy. When I reached for a cereal bowl, I saw he'd rearranged the kitchen drawers. Every spoon lined perfectly, every plate stacked by size. He'd never cared about organization before. Around noon, Grace called. I almost didn't answer. She'd been texting Eli's name in group messages for days, pretending they were simple check-ins. When I picked up, she didn't waste time. We need to talk, she said. Dinner tonight. Family only. Her tone left no space to say no. I agreed, because saying no would look guilty. After we hung up, I stared at the empty hallway, half expecting Eli to appear and tell me what this was all really about. He didn't. The printer clicked once from the guest room, then stopped. At work, everyone pretended not to stare. I heard Denise whisper something about damage control. I didn't ask. Instead, I opened a browser tab and typed how to delete cached photos from Google. The search results promised nothing could truly disappear. By 5 o'clock, I couldn't focus anymore. I left early, telling my boss I had a family thing. She nodded slowly, as if she already knew. On the drive to the restaurant, I rehearsed what I'd say, that I'd made a mistake, that people twisted things, that Eli and I were fine. It sounded reasonable in my head. Grace had chosen a small place downtown, quiet and too bright. When I walked in, she was already seated with Eli and Mira. Our daughter's eyes lifted for a second before returning to the straw in her drink. Eli looked rested, almost serene. He nodded politely, not warmly. I smiled like nothing was wrong. "This is nice," I said, sliding into the seat across from them. Grace folded her napkin neatly and said, "We wanted to see how you're holding up." "I'm fine," I said too quickly. "Just tired of all the gossip." Grace studied me the way doctors study test results. "You know what people are saying." I nodded, laughing nervously. "They always talk. I can't control the internet." Eli's voice came steady. "You can control your choices." That stung. "Are you really doing this in front of your mother?" Grace raised a hand before I could go on. "Calla," she said softly, "no one's attacking you. We just want to understand." I could feel people glancing from nearby tables. I forced a smile. "There's nothing to understand. It was just a photo." Eli didn't argue. He just looked at me, calm and unreadable. Mira shifted in her seat, eyes darting between us. Then, in the quietest voice, she asked, "Mommy, are you still married?" The question punched the air out of me. Grace inhaled sharply. Eli's eyes dropped to his plate. I reached across the table, but Mira had already turned away, pretending to play with her napkin. I don't know where she gets these ideas, I said, trying to laugh. Kids repeat everything they hear. Eli finally looked up. She heard it from her classmates, he said evenly. Their parents talk. Grace shook her head slowly. Do you understand how public this has become? I leaned back, defensive. I didn't ask to go viral. Everyone acts like I staged it, like I wanted to be humiliated. No one humiliated you, Eli said. You posted again afterward. That was damage control, I snapped. People needed to see we were fine. We weren't, he said. The waiter came with water, his smile brittle as he set down glasses. I thanked him automatically, pretending everything was normal. Grace stared at me for a long time, then said quietly, You used to tell me Eli grounded you. I think that scared part of you, the part that needs attention more than peace. I froze. That's not fair. Maybe not, she said, but it's true. Eli reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and checked the time. We shouldn't do this here, he said. I tried to smile again, to pull things back. You see, he's always the calm one, I said, forcing a light tone. Maybe I should have filmed this. Make the internet see the real him. Grace's expression hardened. Enough, Calla. I looked at Eli, expecting him to defend me. He didn't. He placed his napkin on the table, stood, and said softly, I won't argue in front of her. I watched him walk to the counter, speak briefly to the waiter, and leave cash folded neatly on the tray. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped out. Grace sighed, rubbing her temples. You think he's the problem, she said. He's not. He's the solution you keep rejecting. I wanted to tell her she didn't understand, that this was about perception, not truth, but when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. My throat felt dry, my hands trembling. Mira looked up then, her voice barely above a whisper. Daddy said we might move soon. Grace's eyes darted to mine. Did he tell you that? I shook my head quickly. He's just saying things, trying to make me nervous. Grace gathered her purse. He doesn't say things he doesn't mean. When the bill came, I reached for it, but she pushed my hand away. You should go home, she said. He'll come back when he's ready. I almost told her he'd been planning something, that there were folders and USB drives and whispers of follow-ups. But the words sounded paranoid even to me. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. I stood on the sidewalk, staring through the restaurant window. Mira laughed at something her grandmother said, a small, soft sound that didn't reach me. For a moment, I thought about going back inside, but I couldn't face that table again. On the drive home, I practiced new explanations in my head. He's overworked. I'm misunderstood. We'll fix it. Each version sounded thinner than the last. The house was dark when I arrived. The faint light of his laptop glowed through the guest room door, left ajar just enough for me to see the corner of a document on the screen. Columns, lines, dates. He was still working. I wanted to ask what he was doing, but my throat closed up again. Instead, I went into our bedroom and opened the closet. His side was neat, half empty now. I sat on the floor, staring at the space where his shoes used to be. The quiet pressed in again, dense and final. In the kitchen, the two mugs sat on the counter as usual, his clean, mine untouched. Between them, a new sticky note rested flat. The handwriting was precise. I won't argue. I'll resolve. I stood there for a long time, reading it over and over, until the letters blurred. Then I folded the note in half and slipped it into my pocket, like proof that something was still left to fix. The house didn't feel like ours anymore. It was too clean, too quiet, and the air smelled faintly of paper and ink. I woke up to the sound of the front door closing and footsteps fading down the driveway. He was gone before dawn again. On the counter sat two mugs, his spotless, mine with a cold inch of coffee, and beside them a printed schedule with one line highlighted in yellow, Meeting, Personal. I stared at it, trying to decide if he'd meant for me to see it. I told myself not to panic. People have meetings all the time. Maybe it was therapy, maybe a notary, maybe nothing. But deep down, I knew it wasn't nothing. Every small thing he did now had intention behind it. Even the way he moved felt rehearsed, like he'd already decided what the ending would look like. I called Tessa as soon as the sun came up. She didn't sound surprised. He's not coming back from this quietly, she said. I told her she was exaggerating, that he just needed to calm down. You always think you can charm your way through consequences, she said. It's not working this time. I hung up before she could say more. Work was unbearable. People had stopped whispering. They didn't need to anymore. The story had already burned through every group chat in the office. Someone sent a meme of me sitting next to Nathan with the caption, Airplane Mode. Off. I laughed in front of them like I didn't care, but my stomach twisted so hard I had to lock myself in the bathroom for 20 minutes. When I came out, my boss was waiting near my desk. She said, "You should probably take some personal time." I asked if she was firing me. She said, "Not yet." When I got home, Eli's car was in the driveway. For a second, I felt relief. Maybe he wanted to talk, maybe he was ready to start over. But when I opened the door, I saw him sitting at the table surrounded by folders. Household, bank, utilities, archive, B. The sound of the shredder hummed from the corner. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to sound calm. "Cleaning up," he said without looking up. "Cleaning what?" He turned a page, circled something with a pen, and said, "Everything that matters." I forced a laugh. "You're acting insane." He didn't respond. He slid one of the folders toward me. Inside were copies of bank statements, text logs, and printouts from social media. The flight photo, the comments, even screenshots of my deleted posts. "You're keeping records?" I asked. He said, "Just keeping things straight. It's easier than arguing." I told him he was being cruel. He said, "No, I'm being thorough." I tried to sound soft, conciliatory. "You don't have to do this. We can fix it. I'll make a post. I'll explain everything." He finally looked up. "Stop performing," he said quietly. "It's not helping anymore." Something in me cracked then. I walked to the sink, splashed water on my face, and said, "You think you're perfect? You think I'm the only one who messed up? You shut down months ago. I tried to bring life back into this marriage. You made me feel invisible." He didn't argue. He just said, "I'm not perfect. I'm patient." That calm tone made me tremble. "You can't just sit there pretending you're the victim," I snapped. "You're punishing me because other people are watching." He stood slowly, collected the folders into a neat pile, and said, "I'm not punishing you. I'm documenting." When he walked down the hallway, I followed. "You're scaring me," I said. He turned, his voice still level. "Then stop giving me reasons to." The next morning, his side of the closet was nearly empty. His suits were gone, replaced by a plastic hanger with a tag labeled "Dry Cleaning, Pick Up Monday." The drawers under the bed were locked. I tried each handle, each small metal key I could find, but nothing opened. In the kitchen, I noticed the sticky notes had multiplied. Paper drop 11:30. Callback, storage options. Archive upload successful. My chest tightened. I called Tessa again. "He's planning something," I said. "It's like he's turning our life into a spreadsheet." She sighed. "Maybe he's just protecting himself." "From what?" "From you," she said softly. That afternoon, Grace stopped by unannounced. She looked composed, polite as always, but there was something final in her eyes. She said, "He asked me to pick up a few things for Mira, just clothes and her school tablet." I froze. "He didn't tell me that." She shrugged. "He will." "Where is she staying?" "With him tonight. She's supposed to be with me." Grace met my eyes, calm as her son. "Not anymore." After she left, I sat on the living room floor and stared at the door. My phone buzzed, a notification from Eli's calendar app that had synced to my account months ago. A new entry blinked at the top. Downtown, 9:15. Finalize. I didn't know what it meant, but it made my hands shake. I texted him, "What are you doing tomorrow?" No reply. I called, straight to voicemail. At midnight, I heard the faint sound of the printer again. The smell of toner filled the hall. I walked toward it, heart pounding. A single page slid out, face down. I flipped it over. Just a blank sheet except for the small imprint of a file name in the corner. custprep.docs. I tore it in half and threw it away, then sat on the edge of the counter until the silence came back. The next morning, I made breakfast even though I wasn't hungry. When he walked in, dressed in a dark coat, I said, "We need to stop this." He poured coffee, calm as ever. "Stop what?" "This game," I said. "You're acting like I'm your enemy." He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You've already decided who I am. I'm just proving you right." I swallowed hard. "I still love you." He nodded once. "Love doesn't fix evidence." The words hit harder than I expected. I reached out, touched his arm. "Please, don't do this. Let's just reset. Go away for a weekend, start over." He gently moved my hand aside. "I'm handling it properly." Something in the way he said "properly" chilled me. It wasn't a threat, it was a decision. He finished his coffee, rinsed his mug, and placed it on the opposite counter. Then he picked up a small USB from the table another one labeled this time with today's date, and slid it into his pocket. "Eli," I said, voice breaking. "What are you doing?" He met my eyes for a second. "Making sure truth has a record." When the door closed behind him, the house felt hollow, stripped clean of warmth. I sank to the floor beside the counter, staring at the space where his mug had been. For the first time, I didn't know if he was coming back. The printer light blinked again, faint and steady, like a warning I was too late to understand. The lobby doors whooshed open, and a rush of cold air followed me in. Everything looked too bright. White marble floors, chrome railings, the faint echo of footsteps bouncing off glass walls. I hadn't meant to come here. HR said they wanted a short clarification meeting, but when I walked inside and saw Eli already waiting near the reception desk, I knew this wasn't about work. He was calm, composed, holding a plain envelope in his hand. He didn't look angry. He looked finished. The security guard nodded to him, like they'd already spoken. I tried to smile. "So, you're early," I said, forcing a laugh. He didn't smile back. "I wanted to make sure you actually showed up." "I said I would," I replied, stepping closer. "Can we talk first? Just us?" He handed the envelope to the clerk behind the desk instead. "This is for Mrs. Marin." The woman looked from him to me, confused. "You mean—" He nodded. "Yes, she'll understand." The clerk slid the envelope across the counter. My name was printed neatly on the front. I looked up at him, searching for any trace of warmth, but his eyes were steady, almost kind in their distance. "What is this?" I asked. "Documentation," he said softly. "Everything filed properly." I tore the seal open. Inside were copies of legal forms, petition for dissolution, temporary custody arrangements, a note from a mediator scheduling an evaluation next week. My throat closed. "You can't just— Eli, we have a child." He nodded once. "Exactly why I did it this way." People nearby slowed their steps, pretending not to look. The clerk shifted awkwardly, offering me a pen as if that would fix something. I shook my head, stepping back. "You could have talked to me. You didn't have to humiliate me in public." He sighed. "Calla, you did that part yourself." The words cut sharper than shouting ever could. I tried to argue, to find the right combination of reasons and apologies that might make him hesitate. "I told you it was a misunderstanding. I told you the internet twisted it." He looked down at the papers still in my hand. "I'm not arguing about strangers. I'm protecting what's left of my life." The clerk called another number to the counter. The sound of the next person's shoes clicking on the floor made the space between us feel wider. I said his name again, quieter this time. "Eli, please, I can fix it." He shook his head. "No, you just explain things until they sound smaller. This isn't small anymore." Grace appeared then, stepping from the hallway, Mira's hand in hers. I hadn't seen them come in. Mira looked confused but calm, holding a little backpack to her chest. Grace's eyes met mine, polite, steady, almost merciful. "He told you it would be handled properly," she said. I turned to Eli, panic rising. "You brought her here?" "She deserves clarity," he said. "Not scenes." I dropped the envelope, paper scattering on the marble floor. The edges fanned out, custody details, financial breakdowns, visitation schedules. One page landed at Grace's feet. She picked it up, folded it neatly, and handed it back to me. Mira tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "Are we leaving now?" Grace nodded. Eli crouched to Mira's level and said something I couldn't hear, then straightened. I wanted to scream, to tell everyone this was a mistake, that it wasn't supposed to end like this. But the words felt heavy and useless. The cameras from the plaza outside flashed through the glass doors. Someone must have recognized us, the plain couple. The irony of it made me dizzy. Eli turned to me once more. "This isn't revenge," he said. "It's order." Then he walked out with Grace and Mira, the doors hissing closed behind them. I stood there alone, surrounded by my own paperwork, the echo of their footsteps fading down the steps. For a long time, I didn't move. The clerk asked if I wanted a folder to keep the pages together. I nodded numbly, gathered the papers, and tucked them back into the envelope. Outside, the light hurt my eyes. People passed without looking, rushing toward their own small lives. The envelope felt heavy in my hand, edges sharp against my palm. For the first time since that flight, I realized silence could be louder than anything I'd ever said. Then the doors closed behind me, sealing the sound away.